Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Humanity Matters Weekly. I am your host, Dr. Philip Fletcher, where we discuss faith and philosophy, nonprofit leadership, and social issues. We want to discuss and engage with ideas about human flourishing. I am glad that you've had the opportunity to join me tonight, whether you're watching live, or this is going to be the recording, or even on the podcast over at Humanity Matters Podcast, which is available at anchor.fm. If you would like to connect with me, there's a variety of ways that you can connect with me on Twitter at Phil Fletcher. Jump over to Facebook for my public page. That's at Dr. Philip Fletcher. Hey, jump over to the YouTube channel where Humanity Matters Media. You can subscribe and see all types of great content. And as always, over at the website, philipfletcher.org. That is philipfletcher.org. Yesterday, I interviewed Lawrence Reed, who is the chairman emeritus for the Foundation of Economic Education. And we talked about the spectrum, all things related to communism and socialism and fascism and capitalism. Check that out. That is available on the YouTube channel, and it will be available as well on our podcast channel, anchor.fm, Humanity Matters, and also available on Google Play, as well as Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you get your great podcast content. So today we are talking about fatherhood. Fathers are important. From the very beginning, I come from a Christian perspective. God made man and woman, and Adam and Eve. Adam became a father. They had kids. We know the story. Cain and Abel. Didn't go so well. But nonetheless, Adam, we can consider to be the first human father. God, our main father. He has made us in his image and likeness. And out of successive generations, men, millions, billions of men have had the opportunity to be a father. Fathers biologically, fathers through adoption, fathers even as a mentor, someone who could possibly been a coach or a teacher or some type of instructor in our lives. But nonetheless, fathers play an important role in our society. And today I have some men who are fathers who are going to talk with us today about what life is about being a father. And so, gentlemen, let me take y'all off of mute. All right. How y'all doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah.
I think we're also muted.
Good. Yeah, themselves off mute. Sorry about that. So I want to go around the horn. We'll start with Fernando, and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. My name is Fernando. I'm 27 years old. I have one son. He is 1 year old. And I have a baby girl on the way. She's due maybe July 4th. So we're really, really excited about it. And my wife and I, we have been married for about 3 years. And has been the best time of my life.
That's good. Hey, Mark, introduce
Yes, sir. I am a little bit older, 44, pushing 45. We have 3 children. My oldest is 21, or about to be 21. Then I've got 2 that are in high school, a cheerleader and a football player. Been married for almost 25 years. That'll be 25 years in October, and I've enjoyed most of it. It has been a happy, wonderful time, and we've enjoyed raising our children, and now we're beginning to get to that point where they're growing up and are all about to be out of the house.
Nice. Next up is my friend Cannon. Cannon, glad to meet you and glad for you to be here tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Cannon, and I live in the city of Conway, Arkansas. I have been married for Almost 15 years to my wife, and we have two children. And my son is 16, and my daughter is 11. Of course, she runs the world. All of them think they do. All of the girls, um, and it's been a great time. I love raising my kids. I love being involved with them, and doing everything that I can to help them navigate this life.
Nice. Thanks, Cannon. Josiah.
What's up? So my name is Josiah, as he said. I have three kids, and I'm 25, so I'm the youngest. But I have three little ones. The oldest is 5, and the next one is about to turn 4 in June, or this month actually, later on this month. And the youngest is 2, and he's the one that thinks he rules the world. He's the spitting image of me in every single way. Yeah, so 2 girls, 1 boy, and yeah, fatherhood has been a adventure, challenge, and I love it.
Nice. And finally, Kevin Johnson. Kevin, glad to have you here tonight.
All right. I appreciate that, Phil. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Kevin Johnston. I live in Bologna, Arkansas. I'm a father to 3 boys, ages 13, 7, and 5. So all of them are about to be school age finally. No more pre-K. No more, having to keep one at home all the time. I'm military. I'm in the Air Force Reserve. I've been Air Force for about 18 years, so all my kids were actually born in different states, which presented its own issues. And we have a lot of people go, "How'd that work out?" But yeah, I'm married almost 10 years now to my beautiful wife, but this is actually my second marriage. I said I was military, so that makes sense. But yeah, being a father has been the greatest challenge, greatest joy, greatest blessing in my life.
Nice. Thank you very much, fellows. I'm glad for each one of y'all to be here tonight. And as y'all can see, as you're watching or listening later on, we have fathers at different stages of their life. For myself, me and my wife, Nicole, we have been married going on 24 years this coming December. We have 3 kids, a son and 2 daughters. A son who is 22, another daughter who is 20, and another daughter who is 19. We'd be considered empty nesters, I guess. So that's where we stand. So, fellas, I'm just going to throw this out here. Describe your emotion, what it was like the first time you learned that you was going to be a father. Who wants to take that?
I think I'll go with it because I'm the most recent one. I remember being extremely excited. I mean, I guess I grew up a little different than most kids in the sense that I've been longing for a family since I was a kid. Growing up, my father has always been a really strong testimony of what a man should be in my life. So I always had that idea of that's what I want to do with my life. Growing up, it was always I want to be a pastor, I want to be a missionary, and I want to be a father. And whenever Sarah told me we were doing a diet at the moment, and we were doing keto, so no sugar. Okay. And out of nowhere, she brings out a glass of orange juice, and I'm like, whoa, I can't drink that. Why are you bringing it? She's like, and then she pulls out the pregnancy test, and I'm like, I mean, I wasn't so excited for the orange juice, but for the child, but the orange juice was a pretty big deal too. So I just remember being filled with excitement and happy to see how the next 9 months were going to look like, and just waiting to meet that little boy that would later come to be Isaiah. And yeah, it was just wonderful.
Nice. Who's up next?
I'll go. Yeah, it was crazy. Like when I first found out I was going to be a father, because Josiah, you said you were 25, I think, right now with 3 kids. I was 29 when I found out I was going to be a father for the first time. So I'm 43 now. So I'm a little more long in the tooth before I had my first kid, but to finally hear, pregnant, I was just blown away because my wife at the time and I had been trying for quite a while and nothing happened. So when we found that out, it was amazing. And there was a chance of, high risk pregnancy and all that. So that was a little scary, but knowing that I was going to be a dad and then finding out it was a son too, it was just, raised the bar.
I feel that.
I was the actual opposite. I was actually really excited because I found out it was a daughter. Well, that's not entirely true. Me and my wife both thought that boys would be easier, but I think I was up to the challenge. And I guess looking back now, I realized that daughters are immensely easier, at least in my experience so far. But when I first found out, I'm not a reactionary type person, so I didn't have the typical oh my gosh, bawling moment. But I was excited because I like Fernando, I had been looking forward to that moment forever. Like since I was very young, I wanted to be a dad. I've always loved, shaping kids' lives and trying to shape their perspectives and give them the ability to think. And that part of fatherhood intrigues me more than anything. And so whenever I found out, I was really excited and probably overly confident. No, not probably. Definitely overly confident in the role, even though later I found out how ill-equipped I was.
Amen.
Yes, amen to all of that. All of that.
Well, I'll mix a couple of their perspectives together. Our firstborn was a son, and we had tried for 5 years to have a child. So when my wife found out she was pregnant, we were exhilarated. I mean, it was beyond joyous. That was why we gave him the name Matthew, because in the Hebrew it meant gift of God. And that was what we considered his birth. And that's something we've done with each of our children is we've named them based on their birth story. My middle son, Caleb, his name is because the word Caleb means boldness. His mom had a real problematic pregnancy with him. And we had stopped trying when my wife, well, I guess I can't say we stopped trying, but we weren't technically trying to have children when my wife found out that she was surprised pregnant with our third child, our little girl. So we named her Micaiah, who is like God, because it was giving God glory. But that with me, there was just this nervous anticipation because I knew from my own upbringing how important a father is in a child's life, because my dad was real big in my upbringing. And I wanted to have that relationship. My goal as I was preparing to be a father for the first time was just how can I build a relationship with this child based on the uniqueness that this child is, where I don't try to make this child like me, but allow him to be who he was going to be and respect his uniqueness and also encourage his uniqueness. So that's where I was when we had our first.
Ken?
Well, I'm kind of the opposite as well. I don't know why. I guess it was more nervousness. I was kind of frustrated, confused. I don't know why I was confused, but it was one of those things, kind of what all the other guys are saying. I wanted to make sure that I was prepared to be that father that my father was to me, a strong man in my son's life. When I found out it was a son, I was excited. But when I found out my wife was pregnant, because of course you don't know the sex until you actually go to the doctor and they tell you, oh, it's a boy or it's a girl.
Yeah.
That's when I became a little bit more excited. And even with the pregnancy, I don't know if that's the question you're going to ask, but yeah, with the pregnancy, when I was there, it's just it changed your entire life. But yeah, I was a little bit confused at first when I found out, but when I knew it was a boy, I was pretty excited.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, when I was a mix of emotions of surprise and shock we wasn't trying.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we wasn't trying, and we was at a conference in Arizona, and you know,
That is
mom
funny.
knows, right? You know, just get a test or whatever. And I was just like, what? I thought, it was doing what we had planned to be doing and stuff. And
Wow.
come to find out, we got a boy on the way. So then I was like, well, that's cool. Cause my dad, he was the firstborn, and I was the firstborn, and Nicholas, or Philip, his first name, he would be the firstborn in my family. So it was a little bit of like, oh shoot, we wasn't prepared for this. And then, well, all right, come November, we're gonna have a son. So, but then I think Josiah had mentioned not being prepared. Like what am I supposed to do with a kid?
Yep.
I'm just trying to work and learn what it is to actually be married, because we just got married in December, and then December of 97, and then it was March of 98 when we found out she was pregnant. And I was like, dang, I guess we're gonna have that much time to be husband and wife by ourselves. So we got.
How old were you?
Let me see. I'd have been 25. 25.
Yeah.
So, before my plan was I wasn't having kids like till I was like 30, so I had all my kids before 30. So that's how that went. So, hey, so we're at different stages, right? And let's start with Kevin. How old is your oldest?
He's 13.
13. Mark, and your oldest. So me and Mark got the same age. So we're going to move from the guys that are like, I guess, quote unquote, seasoned to Fernando. All right. All right. So Mark, at this stage, all right, what have you learned about yourself in terms of being a man and being a father?
Ooh, that's a good one. For me, I guess the thing that I've learned the most is sometimes being a man, you want to step up and you want to be the one that's providing, and you believe that you've got to be the source of all the wisdom in the household. And sometimes one of the things that it's hard to accept as a guy is that sometimes your wife's got better advice, and sometimes those relationships that are built with your children can be very unique for each parent. Like with our firstborn, he and my wife have always been close because they both have very scientific minds. But then he and our relationship is built around things like the Avengers and online gaming. Okay. So it's just learning to, you think as a man, you think you have it all figured out, but at the same time, there's got to be this flexibility to work with the kid and work with the wisdom that God's put in your wife as well, just to learn to work as a unit and a team in raising the children.
Yeah. I think that for me, that came real apparent when our kids hit the teenage years. Seeing the personalities in our kids, and me recognizing, like my oldest daughter, so son, 2 daughters, my oldest daughter, or the middle child, her personality is more like mine. So when it came to interactions, and especially like discipline, that wasn't going to happen between me and her. Nicole had to pick that up. And and Nicole is more like Nicholas. So I took that up, and then Michelle, the youngest, we kind of tag teamed on that. So one of those things was recognizing, and it's kind of cool now, what you can say and not necessarily say to your kids, and what's the best way to say what needs to be said to them, because what is said to one way needs to be said in a different way to another. That way you could get that stuff across and not have chaos erupt and things like that. I've become more patient and more willing to listen, because kids will, when they get older, the older they get, the more rational they get, and they can form their own arguments. And you just got to be like, "Dang, that makes sense. I didn't think about that before." You know? Yeah. Kevin, what about y'all?
Kenny, go ahead.
Okay. I learned a lot from my dad, and seeing him. I was the middle child. I have 4 sisters, so I really truly understand women and how they think, because I was around 5 of them all my life. And so when I saw what my dad had to go through with discipline, but he was disciplining 4 girls. He would discipline me, but he was hard on me because I was a boy and I was the only one. But he understood what I was going to deal with in life, and so I had to have a level of toughness. But being in the house and seeing my dad, the things he had to go through raising 5 children, especially 4 girls,
Yeah.
It like made me like really not want children, because 4 girls. I understand all of their personalities. They have their emotions are up and down all over the place. So as far as me learning, I think what I've learned is I had to grow up quick, fast, and in a hurry. When my son came, I was playing video games. I remember a time my wife said, "Can you change his diaper?" And I said, "Okay." I sit there for 30 minutes. She came back in, "Can you change his diaper?" Hour later, she's still asking me. And so I realized I had to grow up. I had to put some things aside and start taking care of my family, or else I wouldn't have one. That's the biggest thing I can say, is just learning how to grow up. That's really the biggest thing for me.
Good. Kevin?
All right. Well, Kenan, I sympathize with you. I'm also the middle child. I only had 3 in my family, though. But how this has shaped me as a man and as a father, I can honestly say, my father gave me a really strong head on my shoulders. He was an engineer, he was a fireman, and I don't know if you can see that. I'm also in the fire service about 25 years now, and my kids have grown up in it. So that's a family tradition I'd like to see continue. But I grew up with a very stable foundation as to what a man should be. I like to think that I've continued that. As far as my spiritual life, professional life, I'm working on that. I'm working on going to college. I'm still providing for my family, but I haven't had a stable job for 20 years. So it's been a little bit up and down there, but to be able to provide for my family, take care of my kids, take care of my wife, be the head of my household, be the head of spiritually of my household. All that's been ingrained in me. So I like to think that I had a good foundation of that heading into being a father. But being a father to 3 totally different boys has been incredible, because I've had to learn how to parent, how to discipline, how to do all this stuff for 3 completely different personalities, because it's not one size fits all.
Right.
The only thing I can say is when they're babies, it's all wash, rinse, repeat. You got to feed them, change them, bathe them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as far as how to work with them, with how they learn, how to discipline, how their interests, their hobbies, all 3 of my boys are totally different. About a year and a half ago, we actually found out that my oldest is on the spectrum.
Okay.
He was diagnosed as what used to be Asperger's. Now it's called moderate social autism. They don't refer to it as Asperger's anymore.
Okay.
So that diagnosis really, kind of put the gift wrap on what we had already thought. There was a lot of how to work with how his mind is working for him. Because trying to discipline. Well, this was right, this is wrong. You broke the rules. Here's your discipline. He didn't understand why sometimes, so we had to figure that out. My middle is like just king books. He loves reading. He's 7 years old. He's about to go into second grade, and he's reading at a fifth grade level and higher. Like, he's just everything he can get his hands on. He just wants to read. So he's actually my rule follower too. He doesn't like breaking the rules. He doesn't like, he loves when things go exactly the way they're supposed to. My youngest son, Noah, is wild. My wife actually referred to him as feral the other night. He decided he got a bug up his rear, and he wanted to start throwing a ball around the house, like a rubber ball.
Yeah.
And every time he did, he'd pound his chest and go, "I'm King Kong!" Ah! Just in his underwear and run around the house. Just, I don't know if it's summer break. I don't know what it is, but he just went nuts. So having 3 different kids has really shaped me as a father, because I can't. It's not all here's A, B, C. I have to tailor, things that we do together and how we interact and how we discipline totally separate. But all 3 of my boys, I can 100% sit down and watch a Star Wars movie, any of the Avengers stuff, play video games, all that, and we can all just sit down. That's the one thing we all can sit down and just enjoy together. So
awesome.
Josiah, Fernando,
I'll let you go, Josiah, first.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because I'm the when I was like walking into parenting and fatherhood, I was much more ABC minded, right? Where everything I'm very analytical. My mind is very matter of fact, and so whenever I went into parenting, the first one was a dream. My oldest, Alethea, was she was very easy to train, and she was very obedient, very didn't need a lot of discipline or anything. Ziva comes along, and I start getting the sense that the same things aren't working, and it's hard for me to understand that, because the way I've always viewed parenting to a certain degree is, yes, everyone's different, but in the early years, they're the same. You train them the same way, and then as they get older, that's whenever the differences start manifesting. I realize that is complete bogus, and every single one of my kids are completely astronomically different, and I realized that put a huge strain on the way I looked at parenting, and so I especially with my last one, Jeremiah, he is 2, and he was a perfect baby up until the age of 2. And I'm not being exaggerated. Like, I mean, he slept through the night. He was obedient. He was sweet, just perfect. Smiled 95% of the time. And then all of a sudden, he started getting this entitled mentality, and we're struggling with him. He's the only one that we really genuinely struggle with. So it shaped me in a weird way, because I've realized, because I see myself in him more than anyone, and so I'm constantly finding myself just struggling to try to find the line between the two of parenting strictly whenever he's acting out, and just parenting out of frustration because he's acting like me, and I despise the way I was as a kid. I've seen home videos of myself, and I hated the way I acted. I wish my parents had worn my butt out a lot more than they did. My mom was very lenient with me. I was the youngest, just like Jeremiah is, and I see a lot of the same tendencies in him as I see myself. So it's a struggle, and I haven't figured it out yet.
Feel that, Fernando?
Well, I say it's still really young. I'm not saying that at his young age he would not present a challenge. I think the last couple of months I've been able to see more of that sinful nature just flourish.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I mean, at this point you cannot discipline him much more than just saying no and show him what you actually want to do. And at times I also feel like I'm doing what I was trained to do whenever I was training my dog. So it feels like, whoa, am I mixing things? Am I supposed to act like this to him? Am I supposed to like offer him a cookie after he instead of throwing the stuff up from the table, puts him on the table. So it's really just, and it also generates on me all these thoughts of, man, I really hope, or I mean, yeah, I hope that he doesn't become one of those rebel kids, because or that I'll be able to guide him once that rebellion starts showing even more, because uh, he'll like sometimes even throw some hits at you if he gets upset,
Yeah.
and I'm still at the point where I cannot discipline him. Like if I hit him, he understands he did something wrong, but he doesn't really understand why I hit him. Besides, maybe I'm being mean or something. So I'm still on that stage, and it had just made me more aware of my sinful nature, and of like, hey, I act like that sometimes towards God, and he's just a child, and man, am I just a child sometimes to God? Like, do I behave like just a little baby with him, even though we have walked all this time since, I mean, I grew up in the faith, and I became complete in God once I was in college. So, I mean, I have a history with him. So, am I sometimes like this little baby boy that reacts whenever something goes wrong and whenever he doesn't get what he wants? So, yeah, it's just giving me that perspective.
That's good. Yeah, I think we could all agree that fatherhood humbles us, because we have to admit, shoot, I don't know what to do. I can't fix this. It reveals some level of our inadequacies, because I think men in general, we want to be able to try to fix things and have some semblance of order, and kids, and I'll say this, kids at every stage, they challenge that to some degree. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Philip Fletcher with Humanity Matters, and we are talking about fatherhood today with 5 of my friends and fellas. So what assumptions have been challenged since you have been a father? We all have these preconceived notions of what parenthood would look like, even what parenthood would look like, when our kids become, school age, teenagers, in some of our cases, young adults. What assumptions have you had that have been challenged, and now you're like, hey, I got to do away with that, because here is reality for my particular situation?
I guess the assumption that hit me, or that I had to confront when parenting, especially with 3 kids, is just how different. And it's something you mentioned earlier. I had the assumption that I would be able to discipline each child kind of the same way. That my oldest son, he was I think it was Kevin had mentioned, a rule follower. My oldest son was like the rule follower. And then my middle son was he's like the most good-hearted person you'll meet. He will do everything he can for you. And then you get to my daughter, who's the youngest, and she is like the rebel in the house. I mean, she's the most difficult one. So the disciplinary things that I did with my boys have not quite been the same with my daughter. Just by nature of her being a girl and them being boys, but then also just the entirely different personality and the way they receive discipline and how they respond to discipline. Like with my boys, the whole the physical discipline was kind of a thing. My sometimes even my physical presence was a sense of discipline. I could scowl, and my boys would back down if I would scowl. And they would realize they had stepped out of line. But the daughter doesn't do that. She's one that the scowl doesn't mean anything to. But by golly, the cell phone. That's something that you take that cell phone, and suddenly the attitude and everything just completely flips around. So the assumption that I was going to be able to use the same discipline with each of them was just totally busted once we had kids. I just realized each of them was so different and unique in their personalities, so discipline was different for each of them.
Who else?
I think for me, it's two assumptions that actually aren't necessarily in line with exactly that. I mean, I agree with you, Mark, but for me, it was just upheaval. All right, it was the first one. My son was born. I was married. Things seemed to be going well, and next thing I know, I'm separated. Going through a divorce, but I'm also a single father now because I he came with me, which is great. I wanted that, but for about a little over a year before my wife that I'm married to now ended up moving up, um, I was a single father, and you, Dr. Phil, you were talking about like no idea what's going on. There's no
Yeah.
owner's manual,
Right.
So it's me uh, working crazy shifts in the Air Force with a 3-year-old and trying to get him into pre-K, trying to get a babysitter lined up, trying to do all this. It was a madhouse, but the assumption that things were going to go well that went out the window. But we survived, and thrived from it too. My oldest and I still have that bond that it's just me and him against the world kind of thing. We can take on anything and we'll do well.
Mm.
But the other assumption, and this is something that has bugged me a lot, and I'm sure you've seen it if you watch TV, you notice it in commercials, that bumbling father,
Yeah.
Bit.
The Homer Simpson type. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
here comes the wife to the rescue. Fathers
Yeah.
are whatever. I had taken all 3 of my kids out to eat one day, give my wife, the day off. She went out with some friends, and I took them all out to eat breakfast one morning. And the waitress asked where my wife was. And I said, "Well, she's out." I said, "I'm just hanging out with my sons." And she said, "You got them all dressed and out of the house, and doing all this just by yourself?" And it just floored me. Like, are we that? Are we looked at as being that useless? Like it blew me away that assumption is still alive and present, that fathers are useless without their wife or significant other. I don't want to just say wife, but
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's always bugged me.
Yeah. Hey fellas, could y'all take care of your kids if left by yourself for a week?
Yeah, I've done it.
now
Fernando, could you make it happen?
I could. I mean, I definitely could. I do see myself having lots of struggles and texting her every now and then, be like, "How do you prepare this for him again?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll find the answer, I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah, we will find the answer. Any other assumptions that have been challenged? Anybody?
Some assumption. Well, my dad was a huge disciplinarian, and he was a baby boomer, and he's almost 70, and he wore me out. Like, he wore me out. I needed it. I deserved it, and I thank him for it to this day.
Mm-hmm.
I took what he did to me as far as discipline, and I used it on my son, and it was received by him.
Okay.
He did something, I pop him, he wouldn't do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And that still holds true to this day. He's 16 now, but he may say something here or there that I don't like, but I kind of talk to him about it. It's not or I might kind of rough him up if I have to.
Mm-hmm.
But my daughter, it's a complete 180. Like, I tried to use that same method.
Yeah. It's
like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was not received. I realized quick that I had to change my assumption, because I thought that I could just do the same thing with her, but it didn't work. And so my daughter's 11. I'm still learning how to navigate that part. I talked to her, and all of the assumptions that I had about that, I've thrown them out the window.
Okay.
Now it's more of me learning from her, because girls are up and down with emotions. I'm learning from her, and she still's disciplined. Like Kevin said and Mark said, taking away some electronic device or something like that, that hits home more than getting loud or scowling or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was truly an assumption. I thought that I would just be able to take from my dad and move forward with, and it wouldn't be any problem. But I found out quickly once my 11-year-old was born, that didn't work.
Gotcha. Decide anything?
I can't think of any specific assumptions that were, like I said, I was really confident going in, and there was a lot of things that kind of shifted in my confidence, but it was more just realizing that I guess the big assumption was that it was easier than it actually was. And so the first one was planned. We wanted to get pregnant. We had just got married. Unlike you, though, we were planning on having babies right off the bat, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't mind it becoming a year later, but we were just like, let God plan the family. That's the homeschool thing, right? And I was homeschooled, so let God plan the family, right? So the first one was planned. Second one, semi-planned, right? We weren't like on birth control or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we assumed that because of how soon after, because Jackie was still nursing, my wife was still nursing, so I was like, the chances are slim. Everyone in Google said it was a lot slimmer chance. No.
Dr. Google.
Yeah, so Ziva came along, and then the third one was basically unplanned. I think there was a couple times where we were like, maybe we'll have another one, kind of, and then boom, God was like, yep, you're gonna have another one. So I realized very soon, like I said, Alethea was smooth. The first one was real smooth. Everything just felt like I just had it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, up till she was like a year old, I just felt like I had it. It was smooth. I was a natural as far as I could tell, and people told me that. Then bam, suddenly we were outnumbered, and people told me, oh, you're gonna be outnumbered, and it's gonna be, and then all of a sudden we just started feeling this like being swallowed, where we were like drowning, and I was like, my big assumption was like, okay, there's no like perfect plan to make this easy. It's going to be difficult because now I've got to deal with, like we've discussed, all these different types of children, and because of my way of thinking, I'm very systematic, and I want to be consistent in doing the same thing. And when I realized that Ziva does not, react the same way as Alethea to this and that, and it became a whirlwind of like, how do I keep everything straight with all these kids, especially because they're so close together. It creates a serious problem because they see each other being disciplined a certain way and so forth and so on. So there's a lot of issues that come along with that. So it's been challenging, to say the least, with them being so stair-stepped in their ages.
Yeah, got it. Hey, we are talking fatherhood. Host Dr. Philip Fletcher with the Humanity Matters Show. If you got a question or a comment, please shoot it our way. We would love to take it. So, fellas, ideals are important. So, for instance, in our family, it's real important. One of the things that we've done is obviously it's important to talk about faith and how that's important to one's life. We've also talked about putting the ideal of hard work is another big thing that our family has really emphasized, and being creative and thinking outside the box, to achieve those things that you want to do in life. And so, whether at the beginning stages of being a father or midway through, you're just rocking and rolling. What are some ideals that you sought to put in the hearts and the minds of your children, so that when they leave the house, they have kind of like these guiding stars that can take them through life?
So I'm a libertarian, and that philosophy has seeped through heavily in my parenting, and I don't regret that at all.
Okay.
One of the main central things I've taught my kids since they were as young as I could teach them anything was private property.
Okay.
And so that meant certain toys were theirs and certain toys were shared, and the toys that were shared had to be shared equally, as much as possible. The toys that were not shared and that were given to a certain kid were their toys, and therefore they had the right to share or not to share. And the ones that would cry over it would be scolded, not physically, but scolded, because they have no right over that toy or whatever it is. And it took pretty well with Alethea. Ziva a little less so, and Jeremiah owns everything in his opinion. So again, the differences have been manifold and manifested through that specific ideology of like, hey, you own certain things, and you have the rights to do certain things. And we still encourage, and we specifically will like have conversations with the kids individually about, hey, you need to share because you want people to share with you. You want them to share whenever it's their toy, and et cetera, et cetera. But there's been times. One time I brought a Leapfrog computer home because one of my children was really well behaved while me and my wife were gone for a few days, and one of them was not. And the one that was well behaved got a Leapfrog computer, and it was their computer, and they didn't want to share. And there was a whole ordeal of it for a week where it was kind of constant fight. And we eventually, and because of that one instance, they finally got it into their brains that, hey, if something's mine, I can share it and reap the results of getting something shared to me later, hopefully. Or I can not and be selfish with it. And I'll find out later that they remembered that and they won't share with me later. So that's one of the big things. My libertarian principles across the board generally inform certain parts of my parenting. But yeah.
Woo pig.
That was my son. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I had the game on in the other room, and I guess he was in the back room and came in and saw something going on with it. I don't know.
Well, do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, two things. One, I'll answer the question in a second, but I'm gonna have to duck off. I hate doing this. I apologize.
No problem.
Thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet you guys. But
yes, sir.
Two things, Josiah. I agree with you with that. Being a libertarian, being it's there for me, but it's a little more low key. I like to kind of let them feel out their own way, especially amongst each other. But then I'll come in with exactly what you were talking about. But the two big things in my life is love God and serve your neighbors. That's what I've tried to instill in my sons is put God first in your life and have a heart for service, have a heart for helping people out in whatever way that's manifested, in whatever way they're led to do so. Just have a heart for service and follow God's lead.
Sounds good. Hey, Kevin, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service, Kevin. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Kevin.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Yes,
have a good night.
Who else?
Well, I guess the ideals that I've tried to instill in my children, I'm also a libertarian and a Christian. So just this concept of, as Josiah talked about with private property, but also this instill in them this compassion for other people, just to realize continually that not everybody has the same things that they do. A lot of people don't have, some people don't have, a good father or a good mother in their life. They come from all kinds of issues, and just to understand that sometimes when you meet someone, you're not meeting the finished person. You're meeting that person in that moment. So I've tried to, because of my libertarianism and because I do have faith in God and love Jesus Christ, one of the things that stood out to me in his ministry was the power of the moment, and just trying to impress on my kids how important each moment is and how important building a good relationship with other people so that each moment can be full, so you can fully live in each moment and fully live out your faith in each moment. And a lot of that boils down to just basic compassion for other people.
Sounds good. What about you, Fernando?
I mean, he's still pretty young, but the one thing that I keep coming back to is striving to find the answer to everything through prayer. That may look on praying while we're sick. He has been fighting ear infections for ever since November or something like that. So every time he's sick or can sleep, we pray. Whenever it has been a little bit tight on the finances, we sit down and we pray, giving thanks for what we eat. Whenever we're driving and going on a trip or just starting the day, prayer. Trying to. I know he's still really young, but I hope that as we continue that as a tradition that at least I know my father did with us growing up, and to this day, even whenever I have been in the car with him, it's always that prayer of, hey, if it's not with God, it's not going to happen, and if it's not through him, we're not going to make it. So let's go back to him and trust us to the one that can actually, that who's actually guiding everything that is happening.
Yeah, that's good. Kenny?
Yes, sir. God is always first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. So God has always been in the driver's seat. At times we try to open the window and maybe jump out the car or open the door and try to get out. And if we do happen to, we're out of his will. And so those are things that we've taught our children. We've always been to church, whether it was every Sunday, it was enough to get them to help them to understand who God was, and being around people who believe in the same principles and ideas. And also with us, we all sit down and talk amongst each other about how we feel about things, how we feel about the world, what's going on in the world today, politics, so that they're comfortable with talking to people about those things. And it's not if somebody brings up a political party or anything like that, it doesn't offend them. I've taught them not to be offended. I've offended them so that they understand what it feels like to be offended. So when they're out of this bubble that they're in, they're not offended easily. They can take some blows. They can take what life has to dish out to them, so to speak. But I try to push them to do their own business stuff. My son right now, he has chickens. He sells eggs. So maybe one day he may have 100 chickens and he sells eggs and he has his own business, or any other business like that. And he does a lot of other things. And my daughter, she helps. They have a dog, so they learn responsibility of taking care of that dog, because I wasn't going to do it. Sometimes I step in to help discipline the dog, but they have to feed him. They have to make sure they feed him. They have to make sure he takes a bath. They have to make sure. So we try to instill all of these things in them. So when they get to that point in their life where they have to fall back on our advice as parents, they know who God is. They know how to hustle. They know how to be creative. They know how to think outside of the box. And so that's what we've done as parents with our children.
Got it. So we're on our downswing. So what does a father need from a mother in terms of support? What does a father need from a mother? Anybody want to tackle that one? The reason I ask that is, a lot of times, we hear emphasis on, what a woman needs and emotional support, in terms of the home and goals and things like that. But looking at it in the opposite direction, because a father has as much responsibility and influence in the life of his child or children in all our cases. What is it we need from the mothers who are parenting with us in an ideal situation?
I'd say the honor and recognition that the mother brings from the children, like for her to guide the children to see the father as this figure of authority.
Okay.
And I know that was the thing my mom did for us with my father, and she always just like before our eyes as the children, she just praised him and was always saying like how good he was doing things for the family, and how he would sacrifice, and how he would come out of his comfort zone so that we could have things and enjoy things.
Okay.
So and I know my wife does it with Isaiah, even though he's just a little baby. It always just pushes him to look up to me and see how I can help him in whatever small situation may be.
How does that make you feel, Fernando?
Empowered and
Okay.
with a lot of responsibility. I mean,
Okay.
right now, like I said, I keep diminishing it a little just because he's a baby, but it always brings back to me that sense of, dang, I'm the father.
Yeah.
I'm not just the dude that gets to raise this baby with my wife, but I'm the father of this child, and all those ideals that I have because of my father and because of God, of what it means for me to be my son's father. So it humbles me. It excites me. It makes me feel like, man, this is quite the job. But I'm so happy I'm in it. So that's how it makes me feel.
That's good work. Somebody else?
I guess the things that I've needed the most from my wife over our marriage and during the time that we've been raising kids, one is just understanding that when we're dealing with the kids, we're each going to have our different methods that are kind of unique to us, and what sometimes she may think's the most appropriate course. Sometimes I may think something's different, but just being able to understand that we're both looking out for what's best for the kid. So we need to find a way to work together to do what's best for the child. So just, understanding from that perspective that, as a father, I do want what's best for that child, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to help do what's best for the child. And the other thing is just, that's been important to me, is just having affirmation, just, for her to say, you're a great father. I can't really put into words how powerful that statement is to me, for my wife to say that to me. It's one thing for your kids to say it, but it's something totally different when your wife just acknowledges that you're knocking it out of the park. You're doing a great job as a father, and just, expressing that appreciation for what you've done. So those are two things that have been very important for me as a father to have from my wife.
That's good.
I agree with both of them. But to contrast that, I think something that I desperately need and sometimes don't want is constructive criticism, where my wife can come to me and be like, hey, and be honest about her perspective of my parenting, being, saying, hey, I think you disciplined in anger then, or hey, I think that there could have been a better way. And it's not something that generally, because of my personality and because of my sin nature, that I generally tend to take well in the moment. But looking back after I've thought about it, a lot of times my wife will bring something to my attention and be like, I think that you could have done this better or whatever. She also does all the other things, the affirmation, like Fernando was talking about, and Mark. Absolutely. She tells me constantly how much she thinks I'm a great father and how it's amazing to watch me be a father. That makes me feel amazing, warm and fuzzy and all that stuff. But the criticism and the willingness to confront me honestly, especially me being me, with my personality, means a lot, because it means that she cares enough about the kids to be like, hey, I think we should probably talk about this specific thing that I think you may have done a little less than perfect. So I think that's something a lot of times possibly mothers are not willing to be completely and utterly honest, and then behind the father's back they might parent differently.
Mhm.
I think that's a dangerous recipe. I think as long as they're both in line and they both know exactly. One of the biggest pet peeves I have with some parents is that they will admit that they both approach parenting differently. And it's one thing to approach parenting differently on certain things, like, hey, I discipline a little bit differently, blah, blah, blah. But it's another thing to have a different philosophy and a different mindset of what the ideals are that you're teaching your kids. I think it's very important that you come together and figure those things out before the baby's born, and if not, right after, because as that baby grows old, he or she is going to see that difference between ideals, and it's going to create conflict in their personality.
Yeah, you're right. The father and mother have to be able to speak with one voice, because that's important. If not, kids can pick up on that. And me and my wife used to run a group home with 6 girls, and those girls, for survival reasons too, they were able to pick up and be able to, what we call staff splitting, and pit, one staff member against another, or one house parent against another if need be. And so it was important, that, you come from different backgrounds, but you got to be able to figure out, how are we going to tackle this together and speak with one voice. So that's important. Ken, and actually, Josiah, your wife sounds a lot like mine. Gives that criticism, but it's so that to be better, to be a better father. And that's helpful. Because I know my thing is, early on, is I'm a provoker by nature, so in the scripture, it talks about fathers provoke not your children to wrath. Like, that one speaks to me, because I'm like, yeah, he was thinking about me when he wrote that. Yeah. And so that was a constant reminder Nicole would bring up to me. And even my kids, they would notice it too. You're provoking, and so on and so forth. So, but it was helpful in the long run. Cannon?
Yes, sir. You all, Josiah, Dr. Fletcher, y'all hit on exactly what I was going to say. A united front.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that with my parents, and I could see how my dad was frustrated because all of my sisters could play my mom against my dad, and I saw it. And my dad, we had talks because, I'm his only son, so I got to, he worked for the gas company, so we would go to Greenbrier, the Central Arkansas area, and he would tell me his frustrations. He was like, he would say this, and this, and I'm just like looking at him like, but you're my dad, like, nothing bothers you. I've never seen you cry. But I heard that frustration come from him. And so when I have my own family, I was telling my wife, I said, baby, look, I said, we got to make sure, I said, because I saw this with my parents. I said, we have to make sure that we are like this. We cannot be separated. I said, because what's going to happen is they're going to see that we're not in agreement, and they're going to take advantage of it. They can pick up on that. They have a keen sense of doing that. So if we have a united front, I think that's the biggest thing. And then we've gotten better with time. We've improved. And some of the things the other guys mentioned, hints of it here and there, but my wife is an awesome lady. She supports me. She's always, I went outside earlier and grilled, and she was like, can you grill? I was kind of like, and so I went out there and grilled. I did it for her, and she came in. She says, baby, I love you. Thank you so much. Gave me this big kiss. I'm smiling, big time. So, that's wonderful, man. That's wonderful.
That's good. Hey, last question before we close. So, what is your hope for your children? What is your hope for them?
That they'll grow to be lovers of God before lovers of anything else.
Amen. Obviously, same. That's the number one priority. But I truly want my kids to understand that they don't have to be the same as everyone else. And they don't have to find their security in being different either. That's something that personally I struggled with, right? Growing up, I was always very different, and sometimes at different periods of my life, I tried to blend in, and other periods of my life, I tried to stand out. I want my children to be fully willing to be different, but for the right reasons, not for just the sake of being different and being edgy. I want them to be willing to be creative in their own ways and communicate those things as long as they're doing it to the glory of God.
Right.
I guess for me, it's going to be of course, as a Christian, I want loving God to be the primary thing in their life. One of the things that I've always tried to instill in them is, you love God, you love your neighbor, but the Bible also says to love your enemies. So I want you to be someone who I want them to be people who are willing to love their enemies, and to be that type of person in this world. Because I think that's something our world needs, but I also want them to be the unique person they are and not to be ashamed of who they are uniquely. I see the Star Wars and Avengers stuff in the background there.
Yeah.
Each of my kids is different and has that different set of unique tastes, unique likes, and that unique personality. And I want them to not be afraid to embrace who they are and just be who they are in the world, and actually be that expression of God's love in that unique personality that they have.
Yes, sir.
But that's what I want for my kids.
That's good. Ken?
So I think my children are going to be fine. I don't want them to fall for any and everything. I want them to read the fine print. Because I know a lot of things that are said are not really what they are. I had one more. I can't remember it. You may have to come back to me. I can't remember it. That's what happens when you have children, and
you got a million different responsibilities running through your head. Yeah.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
What am I doing next?
Yeah. That's cool. Hey, fellas, I appreciate each and every one of y'all and what you had to contribute and say. My encouragement to each one of you is, you got to communicate as consistently as possible. Again, what your hope for your family is, and then specifically what your children, what your hope for them is, and then kind of hold them with open hands. And it's obviously you're trusting God with your children, but then also as you are influencing them with these principles and ideas that we've talked about, kind of stand back and watch them and see what they do, and see them blossom. And there's going to be times where you're just like standing in an applaud, and there's going to be other times where you just want to just like, man, are you serious? Or daughter, are you serious? So all of that comes together, and just enjoy it too. That's the other thing. I think the other thing, we got to enjoy this experience of being fathers, because we've been given the opportunity to, and we should enjoy it. We should relish it. But like you've all said, don't take it lightly, because it's a responsibility that's been given to us. So I appreciate y'all very much. Appreciate y'all.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Philip Fletcher with Humanity Matters Weekly. Thank you for joining us on tonight as we talk about fatherhood. Again, if you want to connect on any of the various social media platforms, hey, subscribe on the YouTube channel. I would appreciate it very much, very, very much. Also, you can catch this on our podcast, which will be available in the upcoming week. So if you've missed any portion of this, you can listen to it as you're working out, taking a walk, cutting the grass, doing dishes, or just sitting in the house. All right. So appreciate that very much. Leave a review. I would appreciate that as well. So as always, remember to be loved, be kind, and be generous. If we remember to live in hope, we can do the impossible. Take care. God bless.
When I say your name, it says you exist and that you matter. I can't transform what I don't think exists. I won't transform the person I don't think that matters.